So hello guys, in today's video I'm going to show you how we can integrate tRPC with app router in Next.JS 14. So let's get started. So as I'm recording this video, Next.js 15 version is out and it's stable. So we'll create an app in using the Next.js 15 version. If your app or if you have any project that has Next.js 14 or even 13 in it, it will have the app router by default. So let's create a new Next.js app. We'll copy this command. So we'll open up a terminal, paste that command and hit enter. Now let's move into our project that we have here. Okay, so we are in the project now. As you can see, it's a completely new app. So let's first at least run this app. Okay, it's running. So first we'll do some cleanup in our app. Yeah, let's remove the default styling as well. Okay, so once we are clean, let's just, yeah, it's now good. So tRPC has currently moved to version 11, and in this they have a kind of a warning here that says that if you're using the app router, we should use the React server component. So let's check it out here. Yeah, so in this we have the setup for tRPC. So first of all, we need to install some packages. Let's copy this whole line from the terminal, paste. Wait, so once these packages are installed, let's move on to the next step. We have this sample backend set that we have on this page of the setting up with our React components, but we also have a quick start here as well, and also a detailed setup here as well. So for easy purposes, I will create a tRPC setup in the code itself. So let's get started. So firstly we'll create a new folder in the same level as the app folder. Let's name it as backend. You are free to name it anything. Now in tRPC I'll create one file called init.ts that will initialize everything. So first we'll do some basic stuff, which is create this object. So let's copy this, paste it here, and we'll import it from tRPC server. Now we can also add a transformer super.json. Let's install super.json. Also we'll add one error formatter. Let's copy that as well. It's not here, but it's actually in the backend usage of error formatting. Okay, so what does this part? So I'll explain it in the upcoming sections of the video. So React query integration. So yeah, here let's create some base procedures and router. Let's also create one protected procedure as well. So once we have set up all these procedures, let's move on to the next step, is to create a base router from a tRPC router. So for that I'll create one new file or new folder. Let's first create a app router, create tRPC, what it is called, tRPC router, and let's have some sample procedure. I always spell it wrong. It's public procedure, what we have named it. So let's call it as public procedure. That way we can differ it from the protected one. Public procedure dot query, and in that we'll have one async function. In this function we'll just wait for some time. Resolve, yeah, perfect. Now we'll return something called as not this one. Okay, let's do the status 200. It's not a JSON response, it's K and message welcome backend. Yeah, that sounds good. Now also as it's mentioned in the doc, we need to export the type of this API as well. So basically I've done the same thing as it's doing it here. Let's take this, let's export this type of app router. Let's create another procedure called as the sample with input, but here the main thing is the input. So whatever we want to input to this API can be put it here. So for this we use let's first have some good formatting. Sed, what is it? It comes from Zod. If you have not used Zod or are unfamiliar with it, I recommend you to watch videos on it so that you can have an understanding of what I'm doing here. Object, and in that we'll have some, let's do it text, or let's do it okay, let's do it text as well. Dot string. Now once we pass in this input, we automatically get the access here. So whatever we have, let's call it as options. Now let's see what we have in the options. Let's destructure the options. What would we have? What's OPTS? So your input, context and the signal. So for these two we'll talk in the next sections, but let's first have some input. Status okay, welcome, let's put input dot text. Okay, so once we have completed this, let's talk about this part that we have spoke earlier. So what this does is actually, suppose if we use this query or use this API endpoint and some user tries to input a number instead of string, then this API should not get called and there should be an early return or error. So for that, this is the helper. So whatever the data is, it will check if the request has been a bad request because it was an Zod error, that is this error because we are using Zod here, that's why, and it will flatten the cost. It's basically simply returning the error, and it would return that input requires a string but we have inputted a number, something like that. So that is the use of this error formatter. If you are not using Zod as your input validator resolver, you can ignore this error formatter and use your custom one, but this is highly recommended if you are using in big projects, something like that. Let's talk about protected procedures. So for protected procedures, we need some kind of protection basically. So here comes the concepts of context. Let's move into context. So what are context? So context is something that every API needs access to, basically the procedures. It's a great place like to put some connections and authentication information. Let's try to imitate one. We do not have this function, but we can imitate something. So what we'll do is create one sample session. Let's remove this input parameter. So let's create one own, which is nothing but and this return is authenticated user. So once we have created this context, we use this context here, not context, and let's type of create context. Why this? Because we need this particular part type to be typed to this context here. So once we have created this context, we need to attach this context to every procedure that is protected. So for that we want to create a middleware. So what a middleware? Let's find it out. So it's something that we use before every invocation of any procedure. So for example, we can have this one. Let's copy this middleware .eu to protect procedure .eu, right? And then paste it here. And then whatever we have here that we receive in the options. So it's context.session.id. If there is no ID, then we throw a tRPC error. Using this protected procedure, we create one router as well. So it's called protected procedure dot. And now so once we do everything, we are now set up and good to go. We'll talk about how to use this. This is the main bit of our video of using the tRPC on the server side. So first at least check if we have everything good to go. Let's create a sample page. Yeah, I'll just zoom it. Now how do we use or how do we write the queries on the client side? So there are two things. tRPC has two sections. One is the client side, where we use the React queries to call the APIs or call the tRPCs procedures, and the other ones are the server side, which is the main part of this video. So first let's start with the server side actually. So we have created this caller factory from the init procedure or the init tRPC. So in the docs, particularly in the client usage, React query and the server components, once we have set up the back, we need to copy this section. Let's start with the third step now, which is to create one query client that runs on both. Next, create the provider, I guess. Yeah. So for that I need to keep things clean. Let's create one new folder, the root level, call it utils slash Okay, so let's remove these two because these need to be created by ourselves. Okay, so this comes from this backend folder where we have created this app router and this make query client that we just made in the query client here. Let's import it there. Now everything looks good. Transformer and using super JSON. Yeah, comma. Okay. Why? Because for our backend as well, when we initialize this main tRPC, we are using the transformer. That's why we need to provide it to the provider as well. Okay, so once this is done, copy this tRPC provider and wrap everything that we have in the layout tRPC provider and then move everything up. Yep. So this looks good, and this is the main part that we need to focus on. So this section particularly, just simply copy this file in the tRPC folder, create a new file called the SSR color.ts and just paste this. Remove the imports that we don't have. Import this from the backend folder. Import this from this one. Import this from the. This should be clear context, and this should import it from the backend folder as well. So this is done. It's what I did was just imported everything from the correct folders. It's not that I'm creating some new files. These are already created by us just now. So we use this tRPC and we'll kind of rename it here because we need two PCs. One is from the server and one is from the client. So we do not need a conflict to just rename this as SSR tRPC. SSR. Now just copy this, go to page 1, and for any component to become server, it's default by the already server, but if we need to fetch something, make it async, and let's await the tRPC dot. Okay, let's just import this dot. Let's do sample procedure dot. We'll just call it and let's see what we get data. Okay, we do not need to destructure it. If we destructure it, we simply get the message and the status full type safety. Message and the status. So now let's move to page 1. Okay, here we can see we got welcome backend and the status. Okay, it's bit T. Let's do some good things. Okay, yeah, this looks good. Now we have set it up tRPC on the server side. Again, if this is not working, just check this file here, basically where we create this particular line of creating the hydration helper and creating this color factory. Where does this come from? This comes from the T object. When you use the T object that is present here, there is the method called the create color factory. Use this one and then again use this as well on the server side color as well. I'm just following the knocks. It's nothing new from my side. It's just simply this one, and if you want to do below these steps, you can do accordingly. but I feel the preferred way of using basically this approach of having the data on the server side and then printing it out on the diff, that makes it looks cleaner. So if we refresh, yep, now let's check one authenticated route. Now we'll call the protected procedure, sample protected procedure, and let's just try to print. Let's just see what happens when we go to auth page. Okay, it's working as usual. So your protected procedure depends everything on this context. So whatever you do the authentication stuff, like fetching some session of cookies or getting some session from the data, the flow is as follows. First, this protected procedure runs and this checks if it has a middleware or not. Okay, this has a middleware which uses this particular part called as the context, and before running the procedure we know that it has a context. And what does this context do? It fetches some data from the backend, from the cookies, validates it and returns the protected session. So let's now move this. Now let's check. Yep, as you can see we got error as unauthorized, working as possible because there is no actually because we are not returning it. The main goal was to use this on the server side. So how do we get the loading for this page particularly? So let's just first make the APIs a bit slower. Let's increase the to 5 seconds, and let's just first check like this. Let's just refresh this. It's not working. One very basic mistake that I did was not to update these promises. That's why they were not having. Now it's a basic JavaScript. Let's just load. It will load for 50 seconds. We do not want that. Let's just make it for 5 seconds. Now let's just refresh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. Let's just refresh it again. Went it for 5 seconds. So, but till the time it's loaded, we do not see any loader. So let's add a loader here. So there are two things. Either we can wrap this page into a suspense, or there is something provided by Next.js called as the loading file. So if we add a sibling loading file against a page.tsx, and now let's see. Okay, yep. Yeah, refresh the page. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. Okay, so this is done. The loading section is also done. So let's use this tRPC on the client side as well. Let's create a component enough of pages. Now let's use the tRPC from the client component. We have created this provider. We have created this tRPC. So we use this one because this is the client part that we are using it below the provider. That is the provider that we are using. We use this provider in the client component. Switch tRPC dot. Let's import this from providers dot protected dot use query, and whatever we get back data is equals to let's use this component in the auth page. So yep, embedding a client component in a server component. So let's check it out now. Refresh this. Okay. Okay, let's figure this out. My bad, because we are not using a use client here. That's very important, guys. Now let's see. Yep, loading again 5 seconds because it's the same API call. Why? Okay, so I found out that the main thing that we're missing were setting up tRPC with Next.JS app router, which is basically doing this actually, is to create one tRPC / tRPC and route.ts. This was basically missing. So let's try if we can solve this by creating this one. So where did I find this? Actually, I went through the doc. Okay, this one, adapters, Next.js, and this is for the pages router, and in the below route handlers, and then basically copying this one and then pasting it here, and again create context correct folder, app router from the correct folder. Also I need some error handling. Let's first check what all we have. Allow batching, false. Don't want to clutter my network tab in the Chrome. On error. Okay, error happened. Let's export these handlers. Everything is good to go. Let's restart the project. We get the data. Again, we are not getting the data. Oh, let's close this. No. Yes, now you can see. Let's refresh this one more time. 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. Okay, so we are done now. Everything's working. The main motto of this video is also done, of how we can create or use tRPC in Next.js app router. Server-side rendering. I'll post this, or I'll give the GitHub link for this project in the description below. So if you like the video, please share it to your friends as well. Please subscribe as well if you like how detailed information I give in this video. I made this video because there are no